Before the podcast, here's a word from our sponsor, Manscaped. Do you know what's spookier than seeing a black cat on Halloween? It's shaving your balls with anything other than Manscaped. When it comes to below the waist grooming, there is no need to carve your pumpkins this Halloween because Manscaped is here to upgrade your grooming experience. Go from a bite-sized candy bar to a king-sized candy bar and join the 2 million men worldwide by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code Sean20, SHAUN 20. Before Manscaped, I would be shaving my eggs, and because I've got scrotal angiomas, numerous moles, inevitably I'd clip the wrong part and blood would be everywhere. Manscaped has restored my confidence in this activity. Have you ever tried to trim your balls and it turned into a Freddy Krueger film? Well, luckily, Manscaped is here to save the day and make sure you're smelling fresh with their new refined body wash. Fellas, the ladies love their signature scent and it will scare away those vampires. Get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com with the code Sean20, SHAUN 20. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com with the code Sean20. Say trick or treat to your beautiful new Halloweeny with Manscaped.
How's Sean?
Jamie, thanks for coming to London,
No worries, mate.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah, so for people watching this video then, this is Jamie Boyle, prolific true crime author, YouTube channel, War Cry Press, and we are doing the Craze tour today because Jamie is an expert on many subjects in true crime. I was in America for a very long time, I'm deficient in certain stories, and he's going to bring me up to speed today on the Craze tour.
Yeah, we're going to go in to the Blind Beggar. Very famous because 50 odd years ago, some bloke walked in this pub and shot a gangland rival. So back in March 1966, rival gangster George Cornell parked his car just over there. He'd been seeing one of his friends in the London hospital, which is just over the road. Ronnie Kray was in the Widow's pub around the corner. He got a call saying Cornell was in the Blind Beggar. Ronnie was known to being quite heavily intoxicated that evening, so took it as a bit of an insult, a bit of a liberty that basically Cornell was in because them two had history. They had a fight in a pub on Lemon Road in Aldgate, a pub called the Brown Bear, and it's alleged, I think it's, you know, a lot of people have backed the story up that George Cornell knocked Ronnie Kray out on the front of that pub. So he never really, it was a ultimate humiliation for him and an embarrassment. So when Ronnie heard the news that Cornell was drinking in the Blind Beggar, he got Scotch Jack Dixon to drive him round with a fellow member of the firm, Ian Barry. They both had guns. Pulled up on here. Ronnie Kray walked into the pub with Ian Barry. George Cornell was sat at the end of the bar, which I'm going to take in a minute, Sean. And Cornell muttered the last words, "Well, look who's here." And with that, Ronnie Kray pulled the gun out, shot him, fired. Cornell went. Ian Barry fired a shot in the ceiling. I never really understood why Ian Barry got a 20-year sentence, life. Never actually killed anyone. But and then obviously it's forever in East End folklore. The barmaid ran up the stairs. That night when the shooting occurred, it was at 8:25. That pub had around 12 witnesses. Not one wanted to pick Ronnie Kray out. He was put on the witness parade. Nobody would pick him out, and so that shooting was in March 1966. Ronnie Kray wouldn't be arrested until May the 8th, 1968. So that's over 2 years he was at large. So if you could imagine the invincibility he would have had, thinking I've done a crime in front of the public and no one's yet dared, finger me out. So it's in East End folklore. Listen, that story's gonna outlive us all, but it's forever embedded in the mythical East End, the world of the Krays, Jack the Ripper, and this is the Blind Beggar on Whitechapel Road.
Should we go inside then?
Yeah, we'll go inside.
All right, so here we are in the Blind Beggar, one of the homicides that the Krays got sent down for.
Yeah, the Blind Beggar gets its name from, the building's been going since the 1800s. Really, really famous, well-known pub in the area. It's actually called after a very famous beggar who would just hang around this area.
Was it?
And he was blind, clues in the name. But the murder, what you're referring to, in March '66, George Cornell was sat here with a friend of his, and basically, I think he was talking to the barman, and Ronnie Kray comes in with Ian Barry, stands just over there. Cornell's exactly here, smirking, obviously says that his last words, well, look who's here. Ronnie shoots him, it's amazing how he got him smack in the middle, considering, because Ronnie was really known for having bad eyesight. And
how far away was he?
It was the barmaid. In the book, it said that it was literally 6-7 feet. George Cornell's come off a stool. There's a very famous murder picture of the scene, which is basically, you can see a circle, which is where George Cornell's head was, and blood was just literally where our feet are, Sean. And the barmaid has then screamed, ran down the cellar, obviously thinking she was next. Ian Barry has then put one into not the ceiling, the wall. And if you turn your cameras to, if you want to look over there, Sean, the bullet hole is actually in the frame. That was the exact wallpaper. So all they've done is put a frame over it. Yeah. So that what we're in now, 55 years ago, that was when that's when the bullet went. It was March '66.
March '66.
Yeah. And as I said, when I was outside, Ronnie didn't get arrested for 2 years, 2 months. So you could imagine that feeling of power that he'd have got, that this pub had at least 12 people drinking in it. And not one would pick Ronnie Kray out, purely down to fear, or what would have happened to them or their families if they'd have pointed the finger and said that was Ronnie Kray who shot the man. Leonard Nipper Reid did very well. And when he got the Krays at 6 o'clock, May the 8th, 1968, he got the full lot in one swoop. I think one or two, but he got them the week after. He got them all and basically said that's when he had the power to go to the witnesses and say, listen, these people have never seen the light of day again. You can come to the side of law and order, and I promise you protection. The barmaid was given a whole new identity. The twins' cousin, Dickie Hart, he obviously pointed the finger, and he went off to live somewhere, abroad. So there was, they basically thought they were untouchable. And to be quite honest, Sean, for the years that they were at large, they were. But they were locked up at 34 years old. They were convicted at 35, and that was them till very old men. And really, all three of them died in prison.
Did the cops get the murder weapon?
Regarding that, no, it's never been found. Although the murder of Jack the Hat McVitie, although it was done with a knife in the October of '67. Reggie tried to shoot him at first, and the gun jammed. That was thrown in a canal in Bow, and that was fished out, and I think it's in the Black Museum or something now. But the gun where actually George Cornell was murdered with, that's never been found.
And what had George Cornell done to piss him off? You said he had a fight and knocked one of them out.
Allegedly, I've read, Lenny Hamilton has said it in his books in great detail. Bobby Teal, the Teal brothers, they've went into detail about it. It's in a book, Running with the Krays, Billy Webb, fantastic book. So I think there's a lot of people behind that story to say that did happen. George, allegedly, in folklore, it was because he called him a fat puff. But they didn't like each other. George Cornell was a kind of on the cobbles fist fighter, a man with a really thick set neck. The night George Cornell was murdered, George Cornell's widow, Olive, went on the Kray home, which is about a quarter of a mile on 178 Valence Road, and she smashed a brick through the Krays window. She was obviously upset, so nothing really happened, and who can blame her? But that was that.
Was it easy to get guns back then? I imagine post World War II there was perhaps a lot of weapons floating around.
It was a lot easier then, because these days society's changed. You'd get 5 years without even a bullet. Rumour has it in the gangland East End folklore, if you like, a lot of the Krays weapons were in the widow's pub, which I'm going to take you next. But of course it was, the World War, Second World War had finished. Was it in the 40s, and this was the 60s, so it was a lot easier to get a gun in them days, and they were what they were. They were gangsters. They were people of the underworld, so it was much easier for them to, and obviously they had connections with people like Freddie Foreman, who, they could have basically got anything they wanted.
So did all of the 12 people in the pub end up going state's evidence?
Well, the only one, Queen's evidence. Obviously there was the barmaid, and then there was many members of the firm, obviously certain members. I did a tour with, I was with Chris Lambiano a couple of years back, and he took me to 97 Everton Road, which was where the murder of Jack the Hat took place. And he said, even the Charlie Kray Sr. said to the twins, you're going down, leave them, but their attitude was, no, they're coming down with us. The barmaid gave evidence, the twins' own cousin gave evidence, and there was a couple. Obviously, Albert Donoghue made a statement. Scotch Jack Dixon, Albert Donoghue got 2 years for harbouring Frank Mitchell. But in the end, a lot of people sang like canaries, and to be fair to the Krays, Ronnie, he lived in La La Land. He was sending people holiday brochures, thinking, when this is over, we'll go there. And when I've listened to some of the journalists, they said, as much as the 39-day trial went on, which is one of the most expensive trials in British criminal history ever, as long as that went on, they just sat there and just thought, these are doomed. There's no way. And of course, when Ronnie Kray went in the dock, he made a total fool of himself. Called Richard Jones, the Welsh QC, a fat slob, and Judge Melford Stevenson lashed out and, very violently, and given him 30 years. Did they deserve it? Could they maybe have got, today they probably would have got 20 years tops. Reggie Kray died 66-year-old, not long before his 67th, and he'd done something like 33 years in total. So he'd literally spent half his life. His brother Charlie, many would say, was a political prisoner, got 12 years in 1997 as an old man. So that was really a death sentence because he never come out. So if there's ever an example of crime doesn't pay, then I think it's the Kray story. It's a very Cockney tragedy.
You said the Kray's own cousin testified against him. Was there any consequences for that?
He was never seen again. I've read the reports, and Ronnie would kind of scowl at him. And, I think, obviously, Dickie Hart was... he basically kind of laughing at him, and he would have never said the things to him, to Ronnie White. But if he was safe, the ship was total sinking, and the only thing they were going was the Brixton prisons and the Durham prisons, which obviously both went to in different ways.
Wow. All right, so where are we going next, Jamie?
So we're going to go right up Whitechapel Road. I'm going to take you along a few Kray horns. I'm going to show you the Grave Maurice, which a lot of people think this was the Kray local, but it wasn't. I counted something like 64 books on the Kray twins. I've read 56 of them. The Krays, in actual fact, when they ever referred to this place, it was always in derogatory comments, a bit dingy and a bit of a shithole. Ronnie's local was the Grave Maurice, which is obviously long gone now. Famous pub, which I'm going to show you now. So we'll get along and I'll show you.
Let's do it. Let's go. where are we now, Jamie?
We are at 106 Mile End Road, which just to my right of me was where the Krays had the Kentucky Club. 1962, there was a very famous film in the East End. It was called Sparrows Can't Sing. The film premiere was in the Odeon, which was just over the road, and the after party was held in the Kray Twins pub, which was the Kentucky. All the stars were there. Barbara Windsor was there, and many pictures, which were took in the Kentucky.
It's now a Tesco.
Yeah. The stars, there was always a sense of violence around them, so this is what made them attractive. When you look at the pictures, all the stars they knew, they were second to none. And Reggie, he was very good at. The women found him attractive. Always suited and booted really well. It was just something I think they were born to do, and they did it very well.
Did they have the business sense to run the clubs?
Reggie did. Ronnie seemed to give everything away. A lot of the times they would argue and fight among each other. Basically, Ronnie Kray had no value of money whatsoever. If he had anything to you, if he said, "I like your watch, Ron," he'd take it off and give it to you. Where Reggie was the more astute, more business sufficient, which you had to be. And with Ronnie, it wasn't. He didn't really want to be. Reggie was the businessman wanting to take over the world. Ronnie wanted to be the gangster, to be pictured, to be, and that was the difference between the two.
And what if there were trouble in their clubs, or did that just never happen? They give an interview in the BBC in 1965, and I think Reggie was quoted in saying, there's always drunks in clubs, and sometimes they're flung out. That's why there's doormen, but very occasionally. I've read a lot of books, and listen. If there was any acts of violence in there, then 9 times out of 10 they were the ones behind it. So I've heard stories that crime actually fell because of the way they ran things. People say once they got arrested, all this other stuff happened, things kicked off. But they held some kind of order.
Yeah, do you know something? Back in them days, Bethnal Green probably had something. 12,000 people maybe living here. These days, I wouldn't like to, it would probably be 100,000, and half of them don't even speak English. I spent the week up and down in London, and you've literally, Sean, got every culture in the world, every religion, Pakistani, Indian, you name it, you'll find this in the East End today. And 50 odd years ago, if it was like today, I don't think they'd have took any notice of the two tasty looking blokes who own a snooker hall. But the name commanded fear, and this is why people are really interested. I started studying it when I was in primary school. That's a noise that you hear in the East End all week. Constant police sirens and everything, and but listen, it's part of people want to understand these two twins. They were born 1933. What made them go on to be because their speciality, and I suppose maybe what eventually took them down is there were two. What was their power? Inevitable was it was the downfall, because one of them was a paranoid schizophrenic who had a passion for hurting people. But yeah, on the question, I don't think, listen, in the 60s everyone talks about, you could leave your door open and all that, and Pellicci's Cafe, we're going to go in. That's been going since 1900, run by the same family. The decor's in there. It's been all in there since 1946. It's oft. I mean, if you ever go in Bethnal Green Workmen's Club, there's always an old guy in there, 85-year-old, talking about, they were this, they were lovely. But at the same time, Sean, I've met people who couldn't stand them, who basically think they epitomised everything evil. So, but that's what makes them so interesting.
So is there anything else on this road?
Oh, absolutely loads. So what we'll do is we'll head up left, and I'll take you on a few stops.
Right, let's go. opposite the hospital where Cornell died within 4 hours of being shot?
Yeah, this was, well, that is the Royal London Hospital, very, very famous one. It was where John Merrick, the Elephant Man, lived. And this place, it was the Grave Maurice. It was built in 1874.
Oh, yeah, it's got it up there.
Yeah, Ronnie Kray's local. A lot of people think it was the Blind Beggar. It wasn't. It was. This was Ronnie Kray's local, and he would sit at the very back, obviously being paranoid, and he'd watch everyone coming in. Detective Leonard Nipper-Reid, who died last year, COVID got him, 95 years age. He basically said the first time I ever seen Ronnie Kray was obviously he was surveillance looking at him, and he was in there with his flat cap on, you know, trying to hide. And he said a car pulled up here, and there was a guy come out, looked both ways, opened the door, and Ronnie Kray got out in like a 1930 Chicago gangster, hair slicked back, glasses. And he said then it was clear as day he was trying to beat Al Capone. The Grave Maurice, there's a lot of stories on the very famous scene where there was a gangster called, his name escapes me at the minute, but Reggie Kray had a famous fight just on the front. Buller, his name was. And he bit Reggie Kray, slashed him across the face. You could see that, you could see the scar. And he died a couple of years back, 5 or 6 years ago, but you could see the scar. And this was the Grave Maurice. Morrissey, the singer, has come. He's had pictures for the front of his albums. You know, Morrissey's written songs on the Krays, last of the famous international playboys. Morrissey done Jack the Ripper. So it is a very, very famous part of the East End. Sadly, I mean, I come here 15 years ago and it was still a pub. There was a sign just at the top of there, which was probably there only till a couple of years back, because it marked a tradition of the Grave Maurice. But sadly now it's gone, and it's now a Paddy Power and something else. But this is where the Grave Maurice was, Whitechapel High Street.
Who owned the pub?
There was many different owners over the years. No one really notable, certainly from the books. But people, the Krays are forever linked to the Blind Beggar, when in actual fact it was the Grave Maurice. This is where the firm would meet, and this was where basically if anyone wanted to catch Ronnie Kray, it would be in there.
And you also said there was a bit of Elephant Man history and Jack the Ripper history in this area.
Yeah, just over there, it's now a sari shop. Back in the late 1800s, it was a freak show. It was a
literal freak show.
Yeah, I'd have been in there if I'd have been about. But John Merrick used to walk up and down this road most days. He lived at the Royal London Hospital. He was found in there. There was people in there with two heads, joined at the hip, all kinds of different people.
Siamese twins.
Yeah, people would come from all over Britain to have a look at this like waxwork horror, if you like. In fact, one of the doctors over at the Royal London Hospital saved John Merrick and actually invited him into and he lived out. He died in his early 30s. Had quite a decent quality of life the last couple of years, and that was down to the top doctor at the Royal London Hospital. But it all happened over there. And there's a building just slightly to our left, which is called the Working Lads Institute. And that was where, I mean, now it's an Asian shop at the bottom, but you can still see the history at the top of the building. And that was where several of the Jack the Ripper inquests for the victims were. So, as I said, this place, really, really busy. There's some shops on here that never ever shut. As you can see now, every culture in the world is on it. It's a place that never sleeps. But if you could imagine going back 133 years when the times of Jack the Ripper, there'd be lads, little kids on the corner shouting, "Murder in Whitechapel! Ripper strikes again!" And, horses up and down, horse shit everywhere. It's, but it's the East End. It's the East End history, and it's something that greatly fascinates me, Sean.
Wow. So what's our next stop?
We're going to go right up there, Whitechapel Road, and we'll turn into Valence Road. There's obviously it was a family Kray home, and there's a pub on there which has recently went for a lot of money. Number 71 Valence Road. It was a Kray haunt. I'll take you to the Widows, where Ronnie Kray was drinking. The Richardsons allegedly were going to do a hit on there. This is the place where allegedly all the Krays had the tools guns there, and we'll take you around Bethnal Green Road and have a look about.
All right, let's go. So, the stories of the Krays and Jack the Ripper merge at this locality.
Yeah, do you know something, Sean? I've studied them quite closely for the last 30 years, since I was 10, 11. But I was walking up here, I've spent the week in London, and it was only just dawned on me how close the story is. Behind us is Derwood Street, but back in 1888 it was called Bucks Row. Now this is a street, you can see a rather large building, which that was built in 1886. It's one of the only buildings on the Jack the Ripper scene where it actually just hasn't changed. And basically, so I was coming up Valence Road the other day, and the penny dropped on me that Derwood Street, or Bucks Row as it was back in 1888, the reason that the change of the name was 4 years after the Ripper murders, the whole street of Bucks Row campaigned. We said, we don't want this notoriety linked with where we live, so then it was renamed Derwood Street. Now, on the right is Valence Road, so you've got the Jack the Ripper first murder, 1888, and then you've got Valence Road, which the Krays family home, they were born in 1933, but they moved to Valence Road in 1939. So the irony of it is basically, it's ironic how in the East End, the biggest ever, certainly even British criminal history, Jack the Ripper case is linked to the Krays, which are the Wells, sorry, not the Wells, certainly the Britain's biggest gangsters. So you've got two massive East End stories that are literally touching. You know, in the film, the Krays, Grandad Cannonball Lee talks about his mum seeing Jack the Ripper, and so you could imagine the stories of the Krays being brought up, and anyone for that matter in the East End. I was with a Ripperologist the other day, and he said in the East End it's common, you know, it's common that any parents growing up would say, if you don't behave, I'll get Jack the Ripper to get you. And it's kind of folklore stories, isn't it? It's like the Loch Ness Monster, you know. But these stories, Sean, were very, very real.
So Krays grew up over here.
Valence Road on here.
And Jack the Ripper's first victim was there.
Was Bucks Row, which is now
who was
Derwood.
she?
She was an old prostitute. She was the first prostitute, actually. She'd only actually, I mean, it's sad because her legacy forever is she's a sex worker. I'm sure she would have been long gone years ago, but she'd actually only been working as a sex worker for 2 months. And it wasn't like today when people who sell sex because they're on crystal meth or cocaine, heroin. Back in them days, they did it because, you know, they didn't even have anywhere to live.
Raw survival,
all their belongings was on them. You know, these girls would walk about with mirrors, half a mirror, and it's sad, but you know, she was flung out of a lodging house because she didn't have the 4 pence. She said to a friend who said, "No, come on, it's late." She said, "See what a jolly new bonnet I've got on." Left Brick Lane, Frying Pan Pub, come along to Bucks Row, and eventually met Jack the Ripper. And that was the end of her.
Oh dear. All right, so we're going to the Craze House next.
There's a pub, 71 Valence Road, which is was an old Kray haunt that was called the Earl's Grey, and then it was changed to the Jews Drop Inn. Yeah. Well, I'll take you up Valence Road, and then we'll go on Bethnal Green Road, and I'll show you a few more things.
Great. All right, so where are we now, Jamie?
We're at 71 Valence Road. Obviously, everyone's aware of Valence Road with the Kray story. The Kray family home was just further up. I'd say this is about in the middle, but behind me was a pub, and that was known as the Earl's Grey back in for many, many years. The Krays would be in that quite often. Years later, it was changed to the Jew Drop Inn. I've just been talking a minute ago, and I was telling you the house sold. It's not a pub any longer. It's been made into like a plush 3-bedroom home. Inside is very flamboyant and loud, and you know, I think it's been in the papers a couple of years back. But this actually sold for 1.2 million. Yeah, but this was a big Kray hangout. Obviously, it was there when they were children as well. Grew up around this area, and they were there themselves, you know, for many years as it was a pub.
1 point what million?
1.2 million.
if you're watching this in America, can you see how insane house prices are here?
It's
You would get a man, like 10 of them for 1 point something million.
It's a three-bedroomed flat.
Three bedrooms. Three bedrooms.
1.2 million is sold
like
for.
Almost $2 million.
Yeah.
You could get the whole street in America for that.
Yeah.
So we finally made it to the home of the Krays. Is that right?
178 Valence Road. Although the twins were born in Steen Street, which was Hoxton, it's about a 25-minute walk from here. They were born there in 1933, but they come and they moved here in 1939. This in the 40s and the 50s, because of the family, so many family members, this was known as Kray Corner. So the house, obviously, the Kray family home was from here in 1939. The family moved out, it was demolished. They moved in 67, about a year before the Krays were arrested. And this part of the London has seen a lot of history. If you have a look, there's a bridge on the corner. A lot of the old photos of the Krays. I mean, there's some footage going around of Reggie Kray polishing his car. That was exactly there. There's some photos in 1965 when the Krays were acquitted for the Hugh McCowan case. That was took over there. I think one of the most famous ones was a picture of Charlie in the middle and Ronnie and Reggie, and they stood there like that. And that was just took exactly over there. Them flats just opposite it were there in the when the Krays were about. So all that's been here basically was I mean that row of houses obviously has been knocked down, rebuilt. But where the family Kray home was just the plaque there. Obviously that's 178. 178 was the family home, which is just where that plaque was. And yeah, you know, there's an old saying which I often say, walls restore memories, and there's so many memories of the Krays in here. Where that exact plaque was where the house was. There's lots of stories. So many Kray books, but not only Kray books, other people's books, and there's many stories where they were allegedly going to get whacked. That was a mafia term, but a lot of people talked about shooting the Krays from that bridge. That would have been that. Yeah, I mean, I did the Roy Shaw book, Me Machine, with Roy's only biological son, and there's a story in there when Roy kind of had the hump with them because, you know, they weren't always friends, and Roy was thinking about even shooting them from just over here. So there's so many different stories. It's forever, you know, embedded, and as the myth for the snowball goes in life, so many untruths, people come and attach themselves to them. But this was the home, and everything was so close. The bath house where they would bath was just around the corner. The Repton Boxing Club, although that building's only been there since 1967, the Krays would have went in there. You know, they were at large for the last 67, certainly 68 for 5 months. Cheshire Street runs along. That was the scene of allegedly the Ginger Marks murder, where Freddie Foreman allegedly, you know, the body went missing. That was on Cheshire Street. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, the film, that was filmed on Cheshire Street. It's just a massive part of East End history. And I've been here all week, and most days, Sean, there's always someone up and down, and they're always glancing over and having a look at like 178 Valence Road. So it was known as Fort Valence. That was the home of the Krays.
How old were they when they were in this house? What age did it start?
Yeah, they moved here in 1939. So the Krays would have been 6, 7. Charlie, their older brother, was 7 years the senior. And I spoke to so many people with Charlie over the years, and he was a boxer himself. He was professional, he wasn't bad. Boxed for the Navy, but he wasn't like his brothers were. And, I often describe it in life as, can you imagine being 7-year-old playing with your toy cars, and all of a sudden these two demon brothers come along, and they had a knock-on effect with everything in life. He got dragged into the Jack the Hat McVitie murder. He got a 10-year sentence. In actual fact, Charlie wasn't even present when that murder was, but he was kind of dragged into, you know, mopping up their shit, if you like. And, you know, later on, Charlie Kray got a 12-year prison sentence in 1997, which effectively was a death sentence for him. So, yeah, but, you know, listen, it'll certainly outlive me in my life. And I think the Krays, they've only got bigger since the Kray film, 1990, Peter Medics, the Tom Hardy one, 2015. And I just think, you know, it's not about glamorising them, but it's just people... It's the psychological, you know, you try to understand them, what made them the way they were. But I don't think the Kray, the train is going to stop. I think it's only going to get bigger, and everyone all over the world is really interested in the Kray story.
So was it just the three sons then and the parents in here?
There was a little girl, Violet Kray had, but she was stillborn. So there was Charlie, and there was Ronnie and Reggie. And that was that. So the three brothers, and they went on to, you know, cement a legacy, if you like.
What was the relationship with the parents like?
The mother, they absolutely idolised. She's often described as a typical East End mother, if you like, a bit like, you know, if anyone went to the house, they were offered a cup of tea and sandwiches. And the dad, Charlie Senior, they never had the best relationship. He was known to beat the mother up. Obviously, when the twins got older, they put a stop to that. But I mean, when Charlie Kray died in 1982, the twins didn't even go to his funeral. Obviously, when the mother died in 82, it was like, you know, it was huge. It was massive. People would come just to catch a glimpse. At the time, by then, the Krays had been behind bars for 14 years. And we're looking their age now. They were in the 50s, or certainly approaching the 50s. And yeah, you know, but of the mother, it was they were extremely close to the mother. And even when they were at the Old Bailey, you know, there's a story that Maureen Flanagan says that, you know, in when they were sitting on the 39-day trial, Violet is actually sat there thinking, why are these people making lies about my boys? Why are they lying? And, you know, she couldn't see any badness in her lads.
How old were they when they moved out of this? And where did they go?
Yeah, 1967. So it was a year before they were arrested. And they moved, it was about half a mile away from me. It was a big block of flats, which the parents were in. They also had the flats at Sedgwick Court. Reggie had a flat with Francis. Ronnie was above, and that's where Ronnie would have all his parties and, you know, would party 7 days a week. But yeah, this was the Kray home from 1939 to around 1967.
So what location are we going to go to next around?
We're going to go straight at the top of Valence Road, and that's on Bethnal Green Road. And there's many locations on there, which was 1965, where the church is no longer there anymore. It's some flats. That was where Reggie married Frances Kray. There's Pellicci's, which is, you know, that's legend. Tom Hardy was filmed there. There's English and Sons Parlour. They're buried all three Kray brothers. And also, I'm going to take you to the Carpenter's Arms, pub owned by the Krays in 1967. And I'll take you to the church as well, St Matthew's. They're also buried all, they're buried in Chingford in Essex, which is about 5 miles away from here, but round the corner, which I'll take you now, was the church where they buried all three Kray brothers.
Right, let's go. So we've been through the Krays' haunts, we've looked at the house they grew up in, and the story ends here.
Yeah, story ends here, Sean, for all three Kray brothers. St Matthew's Church in Bethnal Green, and this was where basically although they were buried in, which is Mount, you know, Chingford, this is where the funerals were. Obviously, Ronnie in March 1995, Charlie's next in April 2000, and Reggie Kray 6 months later in the October of that year. And yeah, I mean, Liam Galvin filmed that day, and there's a lot of footage on it, and this was absolutely packed. Stars here, actor Billy Murray, Morrissey even sent a reef, Barbara Windsor sent a reef. There was lots of, and it was the, you know, them three funerals, particularly Ronnie's. You know, it was like something you'd see a prime minister being buried. The streets of the East End come to a standstill. There's rumoured to have been around 80,000 people that attended. You know, it was literally some places closed for the day. It was absolutely staggering. Inside, they played. Certainly in Ronnie and Reggie's case, it was the song Frank Sinatra, very famous song,
My Way.
Was My Way, yeah. And after Ronnie's, they played I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. But this was it, and it's to go in. I think it's a wonderful church, really scenery. I often come here quite a lot, and yeah, Dave Courtney done the security, and it was basically 100, I think maybe even 200 of flat-nosed geezers, as he put it, from all over Britain, the best of the best, and they wore the red armband with RF on and done the security that day, and you know, I think that was probably a lot of Dave Courtney, when he done that in '95, that brought it on top for him, as he said in many of his documentaries since, and you know, I think the funeral cost £14,000, as he said. I don't think he's seen any of that money, but it certainly put him in the public spotlight, and a lot of things for him ended that time because of the attention the Kray funerals brought.
How old were they when they died, and how did they each die? I assume they all died in prison?
Yeah, Ronnie died first in Broadmoor Mental Security Hospital, 1995, so he would have been around 61, approaching his 61 and a half, and the last words he ever said was, "Oh God, mother, help me." Heart attack. The next one was Charlie Kray. He died in April 2000. He'd been in prison by that point for 3 years of a 12-year sentence, and obviously his illness, he declined rapidly. You know, I spoke to people who used to go visit him, and the Charlie Kray, who everyone knew, the suntan, the gold, always had a scotch in his hand. In prison, you know, the tan had gone, he didn't dye his hair anymore, and he was pretty much a broken old man. Reggie died in the October of 2000, and he was released in the August for compassionate grounds. Basically, he was dying, he was terminally ill. So Reggie did have around 7-8 weeks of freedom, and he died in a hotel in Norwich. And all three funerals were here.
So were the brothers who were incarcerated allowed to attend the funeral of the first one who died?
Yeah, Ronnie's funeral, Reggie was allowed out of prison. He was allowed to go to the service, he was allowed to go to the graveside, and then he was whisked back to Maidstone prison. Charlie, when he died, obviously Reg visited him. Same again, wasn't allowed to go back to any, you know, allowed to go to the funeral parlour here and straight back to prison, and then himself, he died 6 months later.
Well, it looks like it's open. Should we see if we can film
we'll
inside?
We'll have a go in, Sean, yeah, because I think you've got to... Anyone who's seen the footage of it, you know, and you see all the famous people there, it's absolutely ram-packed. You could not move. Outside here, there was... I think they put the service on a tannoy, so a lot of the East End, you know, felt like they were there and had the service read out to them. But we'll nip in now.
Cool, let's go.
So, Sean, this is where it all happened.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
It's lovely. It really, really is. I mean, all churches are nice, but this one has a particularly nice state to it. So the coffin was here. Reggie was sat literally just there, with handcuffed to... Yeah, I mean, one thing what was said was when the parents were buried was the prison services, because the twins were only about 5'8", my height, and I think literally they must have found the biggest security men they could have found in 1982, and Ronnie and Reggie said that was done to humiliate them, to try and you know, make them look like dwarves. But this was, you know, Reggie was sat here, and then you've got the who's who of mad crime, if you like. Mad Frankie Fraser's here, your Bernard O'Mahony's, your Dave Courtney's, your Alex Steen's. It was just literally littered full of, you know, full of every face that you could think of in the East End.
Did they make the prison guards wait at the back, or?
Well, the handcuffs were never took off him, you know, and as the funeral was there, and that song "My Way" was on by Frank Sinatra. It's quite emotional because you see at the end Reggie sat here, and then he puts his hand on the coffin. You know, Reggie said he was determined he wasn't going to cry that day, and he didn't. In fairness, he did cry when he got back to the prison, but you know, it was literally every inch was filled in this church, and also up there, you know, it was completely covered by many channels over the from all around the world. The interest, just particularly Ronnie's, the interest, the eyes from the world were on the East End that day.
But the guards ended up feeling intimidated, didn't they, with all those people there?
Yeah, but you know something, by then, when Ronnie had died in 1995, Reggie had been in prison there for 27 years. So, you know, listen, the crimes, you can't condone what they'd done because they were violent, wicked, evil men. But at that point, 27 years, he ended up doing 23, and you think of the child molesters and all this. You know, I've spoken to people who were in prison with Reggie and that, and I think overall the feeling with the guards was, you know, he should have been out a long time ago.
Made an example of.
Absolutely. The name is what killed them in the end, particularly in Charlie's. You know, he was, as Reggie said, my brother was a political prisoner, and I think that was the case.
Yeah, wow.
Right, this is William Davis Primary School, but back many years ago, well, it still is actually Wood Close, but this was called Wood Close School, and this is the school the Kray twins went to from the age of 4 to 11. It's so close to St Matthew's Church, where I think it's, you know, it's ironic how it was so close. The Kray twins started their life at this school, and within a stone throw away, St Matthew's Church, where they were, you know, they were carried out in coffins. Also on the corner, literally a stone throw away, was the Carpenter's Arms, and that was the pub they bought for the parents in 1967. Obviously, it didn't give them a lot of years to go there, but it was a pub that they frequented quite a lot when they had their leisure. Over the years, there's been a few gangsters filming in there. Obviously, Lenny Hamilton, Albert Donoghue, Bill Frost filmed over there. But Wood Close was the school that the Kray twins went to.
Did they get in trouble in school?
Yeah, they were fighting a hell of a lot. Yeah, you know, this is where, I suppose really, this is where they started building the Kray name. You know, they were both skilled boxers. You know, they were literally taught to box. They had a brother 7 years older, and he taught them to box in the Valence Road, which was basically just a 2 up, 2 down yard in the back, no bathhouse, and they made one of the rooms a boxing gym. The Repton Boxing Club is by far the most successful in Great Britain. It was established in 1884. A lot of people think the Krays boxed here, where it is just literally over the road. They did box for the club, but this building's only been here since 1967. So, you know, when they boxed for the Repton, it was another place, and also they boxed at the Robert Browning Club in South London. The Repton is very, very famous. As I said, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels was filmed here. Robbie Williams has filmed in here with Take That. It's just a place that, you know, although I filmed, I interviewed the chairman many years back for a book, and he said, although we get much business from film companies, I mean, Ray Winston sometimes will go all over the world filming, and he'll say, do you know what, when I want to be humble and be brought back down to earth, I go in the Repton because that's where everything started for me. So the Repton, really, really famous club. It's got a big link. The Krays did come here, but it would only been from 1967.
So we're opposite Palici.
Yeah, Palici's Cafe there, Bethnal Green, High Street. But behind us, Sean, was this church. Now, today, it's very plush apartments. But back in 1965, it hosted the wedding of the year. Francis Kray and Reggie Kray, David Bailey, the most fashionable photographer in London, come, and he took all the photos that day. There's photos of just over there to the entrance where Ronnie's there. That's where all them photos, you know, very famous photos. And it was a very Cockney wedding. It was the East End wedding of the year. Everybody was there. Everybody turned out. You know, the sad thing is that happened in 1965, and just over 2 years later, in May '67, Frances took her own life. She was 23 when she died, so she was only 21 when she married Reggie. He'd been courting her since she was 16. You know, obviously suffered from mental health issues, but that was where Reggie and Frances Kray, the wedding took place.
What was life like for Frances after they got married?
Well, they were together, married, I suppose, for 2 years, but they separated. Officially, they were together for 8 months, and obviously, it's no secret over the years that, you know, it wasn't a happy marriage. Oh, this gentleman here if I just get that photo, just come in. Just very good marriage, isn't it?
Can we hold it up to the camera?
Yeah.
So you're saying about what life was like for her?
Yeah, she basically, you know, she became Reggie Kray's property, and you know, let's face it, she wasn't gonna ever get rid of him. You know, at the end of the day, even if they were separated, but forever she was Reggie Kray's. I don't think there's any secret that it was a very unhappy wedding. Here's a factor for you, was when Reggie Kray asked the priest to, you know, would he be in charge to officiate the wedding, he refused. So, you know, he basically, that told you that he could see what was going to happen. Frances Shea, or Frances Kray as she was later on to be known, was stunning, absolutely beautiful young girl. But the reality was, no man was ever going to go anywhere near her, purely because she was Reggie Kray's wife. And you know, you could imagine if anybody started dating her, and she just, you know, as the wedding went on, you know, they had a flat at one point below Ronnie. He had his say in it. At times, he didn't treat her well. And, you know, it's very, very sad that the only outcome for her was to take her own life.
Are there conspiracy theories about how she died?
Yeah, there is. There's one, you know, there was a guy, pretty vocal, Toby Van Judge, I'm allowed to say, because he went public to say that Ronnie had a done in. There's a lot of ludicrous stories, you know. I think one even says that the mother had a done in, but you know, they're not really. I mean, another story, Bradley Allardyce was Reggie Kray's cellmate. He come out when Reggie died and said a similar tall story, which total utter fabrication. But it does, you know, anything with the Kray name does bring attention, whether you're selling books or papers or documentaries or whatever. But there's certainly no truths in it. But it was really, really sad to think that a young girl, a 23-year-old, took her own life. But,
how did she take her life?
She took. I mean, she tried. She did a few failed attempts. You know, so it was noted that a mental health wasn't the greatest. But on that day when she killed herself in '67, she took a bottle of I can't never pronounce the name, barbiturates or something like that. Overdosed on them, and she was found the next day by her brother Frankie Shea. He walked in the room and thought she was sleeping, left her a cup of tea, went back a short while later, and she'd obviously gone. She was cold.
It's a shame, yeah. Wow. Here we are outside Polici's. Jamie.
Yes, this place opened in 1900. So we're here in Bethnal Green Road, Polici's. Very, very famous, well famous, run by a lovely, warm family. My favourite in the East End. The place opened in 1900. It's really, really big towards the Krays story. Never you must get people coming here all the time around here. You get stars coming here all the time, don't you?
We get lots of different people coming in all the time. We get a lot of people coming in to find out about the Krays when they used to come in, especially after the film Legend. I always was told they were really nice men. My grandmother couldn't believe it when they were put away, whereas my dad and that would have known them. Like, well, they used to come in every morning to have their breakfast, And in them days, I suppose you didn't have your mobile, so if anyone wanted to meet them, after they'd had their breakfast, people would have come in to meet them, and that's how they used to come in the cafe all the time.
Do you know what is a really touching story? Is when Ronnie died in 1995, this was packed. Reggie was going past and he looked up at your dad, who was stood there.
He was standing here.
And he waved at him, and Reggie gave him a smile because he knew he remembered him all the years.
I remember Dad going up to the... They stopped outside the cafe, and Dad actually went up to the van what Reggie was in, and they sort of almost had a little cry with each other, because I suppose it was probably one of the only places that he remembers from when he went away that was still the same. Hadn't been...
Because inside it's really impressive, and obviously everyone's seen the film Legend with Tom Hardy, but the decor in there, it's beautiful, and that was put up in 1946. So it's very much still almost like walking into the East End in the 60s, isn't it?
Well, it would be exactly like walking into the East End, and it's like it's stuck in time sort of thing. And it's always been part of our family home. Like we'd come here before school, after school, so we'd know everyone. You get to meet all the faces. Like I walk down the street, hello Nev, and it's a big part of our life, and it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. In the East End, a lot of people would have come in here to meet, take their girlfriend out, meet friends before they went out. Next day after they'd been out, it was a big part of people's lives. Do
you know what they ordered here when they came here?
Yeah, my mum used to make them bacon and tomatoes. That's what she said. My mum's 81 now.
Yeah.
She come up, egg, bacon and tomatoes was it?
Egg, bacon and tomatoes.
That's my sister Anna. I don't know if you can get her over there. This is my good friend. And we've been it's. Every day they would have the same thing, bacon, egg, tomatoes and a couple of slices of bread. And like I said, there were no mobile phones. They'd come in at 6 o'clock after they'd been to their club, running the club. They'd come in here straight away after. And people wanted to see them, they'd meet them in here. So that's where they had their little meetings in here.
Did you guys serve alcohol back then?
I'm not sure. They used to sell cigarettes. I don't know if they sold alcohol. I don't think they sold alcohol. But maybe for them two, they probably would have been allowed to have a little glass of whiskey or something under the counter. Yeah.
Yeah? Sounds good.
Honestly, the East End, there's not much left of it now, but if you do look and hard enough, you'll find it and you'll capture it. And this is Pelici's on Bethnal Green Road. I'm here every single day having sausage sandwiches when I'm in the East End. Nev, come in and see Nev, lovely, warm, friendly person. As I said, the same family since 1900. It'll always go, won't it? Your kids will run it and it'll go on and on forever.
Let's hope it keeps going forever. Yeah, me and my sister are doing it at the minute. She's got 2 young boys, I've got 2 young girls. So you never know what could happen. It'd be lovely if they did.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, if anyone wants any more information on Pelici's, Sean will put the link in this video, so if you just click on it and it'll direct you to it. Pelici's Cafe, Bethnal Green Road, marvellous.
Come and check it out.
All home cooked food, yeah, and we make a warm welcome, because that's how we were brought up in the East End. So when you come down, it'd be like you've come into the East End, we know you, come in, we'll look after you.
Oh, cheers.
Nice one, Sean. Jay, always a pleasure, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers. I've learned so much today from Jamie at Warcry Publishing. Please support him by going down and clicking on his channel and subscribing. And at the conclusion of this fascinating Craze tour of London, we're at the place now where did all of the bodies end up in here?
Yeah, Sean, this is Bethnal Green Road, and we're just here at English and Sons, which is the funeral parlour that buried all 3 Kray brothers. The biggest. I can't think of any funerals bigger, apart from Prime Ministers. When you look at this road, it's always a really, really busy road, and it's, you know, that day there was people stood on the roofs. There was people who took the day off work to just get a nosy at Reggie Kray, or, you know, even just see the coffin. And it was an end of an era, really. You know, this family that had kind of had this organisation with crime from the 50s even to the 60s, and then even when they were in prison behind the door, there was this rise of, you know, this, and then the movie come and they made far more money inside prison than they ever did on the out. But this is where it all came to an end. English and Sons on Bethnal Green Road.
Were they all buried in graveyards, or were any of them cremated?
No, they were all buried in Chingford Mount Cemetery, which is about 5 miles from here. And buried, obviously, Ronnie went first, so Reggie went on top of him. and Charlie next to them, and then both the parents, and Francis went in as well, and Charlie's son Gary Kray. So there's almost like in the corner of Chingford Mount Cemetery, it's kind of the Krays plot at the very end, right at the end, and here we are now, what, over 20 years since our brothers have gone, and the story isn't getting any smaller, it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, there's more interest in them than ever, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So, huge thank you for today, Jamie, and if you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe to War Cry Publishing.
Thank you so much.
Link will be in the description box below the video. Cheers, man.
So much.
Thank you. Yeah, well done. Hope you've enjoyed this Krays tour of London as much as I have today. It's been fascinating. I've learned so much. Jamie is an absolute wealth of knowledge. Huge thanks to him for coming down from the north, 6-hour journey. Please subscribe to his channel, War Cry Publishing. Link is in the description box below this video.
We need a crowd just about a bit more, but we've got a whole street on the road now.
Excuse me. Was that down to Reggie Kray funeral?
Well, then I'm at the chapel arrest now, alright, so you can start bringing the rest of the teams down.
First four. Andy. Rest of group 7. Well, they've got to wait for 3 other guys. Well, no, you can't stop going up and down the pavement. It's a private walkway, you know what I mean?
You've got my number and I'll be back. Okay, cheers, bye.
Everybody stand back. Just stand over there.
What time have you written out?
It's Paul Mason,
Into your chapel arrest.
Stand back a little bit more, please, folks. Thanks very much. Just get back the line. I think this might be the one.
Other people in the cars going along? Other people also going in the cars? And people say the rider girls are they're all of no team.
TV camera.
Yes, I know.
Can we get you back to this lamppost, please? Sorry, people. A little bit more.
What happens? Well, I've got my child. They're doing it differently. I don't know where your flowers are going actually. Should you take them with you? Yes. I've not seen anybody yet. So hang on to those and put them on yourself. That's the best. That's what Mandy's going to do tomorrow. She can't come down today. I'll never saw it. I know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I'm going to see Roberta in a minute. Is Roberta in there? Yeah, but she's oh, I see some coffee. No, not so much. I'll see you later. It was nice to see you at all. Yeah, I saw you on the television.
So many armies that can hang on the other side. See, I don't know, where's the flag?
Anybody else is Victorian.
It's all coming along right now. Right, so only in his lane, your car's on first 16 miles, whatever, going to be in that section. Then anybody after that is going to be around the outside, right, just so you get price spot. Right, because that's one of the important things we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. That's all I wanted to check.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 of us degrees off the car. They put it somewhere.
Good horses.
How are you? I'm good,
tell me what? This is Terry Turbo.
How you doing? Nice to meet you. How are you?
Apparently he's not expected.
Walk up there. Okay, cheers. Have they allocated all the cars yet? Not yet. No, because we're waiting for a car soon.
Grab hold of them in a second.
Will. Joe, Martin. Joe. Now, let him in there.
Squeeze in there as well.
Oh, big iron.
Just help stand up there on the right hand side. Be landing on. Stand to the right hand side.
There's Frank, that's Frank. More coming in. It's funny, I haven't seen a lot of those crime people, really. I mean, like Tony Lambriano and all that. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Johnny's going to stay in the car. Johnny's going to... Stephen, I'll carry on.
Like a watch of the night. You flood them with sleep. In the morning they will be like growing grass. In the morning it is blossoming and growing. By evening it is withered and dry. The span of our years is 70, 80 for those who are strong. But their whole extent is anxiety and trouble, comings and goings henceforth and forever. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall.
Can you go on the grass, please?
Well, once Jack Straw made him a free man, you knew Reggie was dying. It'd be only a matter of days, weeks at the most. But now he was dead. And it was, crowds were massive. It was wonderful. It's a day I'll never forget, as it was a very sad day. He'd done over 32 years in prison.
The old stick-em-up gangster is a part of history, and we are just going through the period of before we turn them into legends.
unfortunately the Krays have gone. Ronnie, Reggie, Charlie. I suppose in many ways I am a link that links us all together. And I suppose in the public eyes, they're making me sort of an icon about it all as well. As long as I go down as the best dentist, I don't mind.
But that I should raise to offer his own tomb for the burial of the Lord. In a spirit of repentance, we earnestly ask you to look upon this grave and bless it, so that while we commit to earth the body of Ron, his soul may be taken into paradise. We ask this through Christ the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Chuck.
In sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life, through our Lord Jesus Christ, we commend to Almighty God our brother Ron, and we commit his body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, departed, through God's mercy rest in peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
Thank you.